Good. Okay, here we go. Good morning, everybody. So what I would like to do today is a little bit different. I would like to start with the second prophecy in yechezkel, where we stopped last time. So yes, so it's yechezkel 37. We did before Pesach. We jumped into this chapter because the first half was the very famous prophecy of the dry bone, which was the prophecy, which was the haftarah that we read on Shabbat Chol HaMoed Pesach. And so we discussed that before Pesach, and what we're left is the second half of the chapter, which we didn't do, which is fascinating to me because I think it's extremely fitting with the theme of Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom HaZikaron. Today's Yom HaZikaron, tomorrow Yom HaAtzmaut. And somehow this particular nevuah really resonates with me when I think about those days. So I want to go into this, and then I want to talk about something a little bit different, something that is somehow connected to one of the previous prophecies of yechezkel, but I want to connect it specifically to Yom HaAtzmaut. Okay, so let's jump. Okay, we're going to start in Pasuk Tetvav. So in chapter 37, Pasuk Tetvav, but what I'm missing is the pages that I just printed with the sources. Just give me a second. I think I left it in the office downstairs. Hold on. I create first piece and then I forget to bring them up. Okay. Here we go. Okay, here we go. That's much better. So, chapter 37, I'm going to do verses 15 through 20. Okay, so this is the second prophecy in the chapter. And again, yechezkel is commanded to do something symbolic. And then twice he is commanded to explain, to interpret that act to Bnei Israel. So let's see. וידבר אדוני אלי לאמור, ואתה בן אדם, קח לך עץ אחד, וכתוב עליו ליהודה ולבני ישראל חבריו, ולקח עץ אחד וכתוב עליו ליוסף עץ אפרים וכל בית ישראל חבריו. וקרב אותם אחד אל אחד, לך לעץ אחד, והיו לאחדים בידיך. וכאשר יאמרו אליך בני עמך לאמור, הלא תגיד לנו מה אלה לך. דבר עליהם, כה אמר אדוני אלוהים, הנה אני לוקח את עץ יוסף אשר ביד אפרים ושבטי ישראל חבריו, ונתתי אותם עליו, את עץ יהודה, ועשיתים לעץ אחד, והיו אחד בידי, והיו העצים אשר תכתוב עליהם בידך לעיניהם. Quickly in English, the word of Hashem came to me saying, now you son of man, take for yourself one piece of wood and write upon it, for Judah, and for the children of Israel, his comrades, and take one piece of wood and write upon it, for Joseph, the wood of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel, his comrades. Then bring them close to yourself, one to the other, like one piece of wood, and they will become united in your hand. Now, when the children of your people say to you, saying, will you not tell us what these things are to you? Say to them, thus said Hashem, behold, I'm taking the wood of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribe of Israel, his comrades, and I'm placing them and him together with the wood of Judah. And I will make them into one piece of wood, and they will become one in my hand. Yeah. Yeah, this is dead. You'll see in a second. Correct. So, yeah, Shoshana, you're muted. Shoshana, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Judah is excluded.
No, Judah is not excluded. You have one piece of wood for Judah and one piece of wood for the 10 tribes, and he is commanded to put them together.
No, Ephraim is one. And
No,
tribes.
and the other one is Judah. The first one, קח לך עץ אחד וכתוב עליו ליהודה.
Okay, I read the wrong
Okay,
pasuk. Oh, כתוב ליהודה. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so Yechezkel is commanded to take 2 pieces of wood and to write on one of them the name of Yehuda, and on the other one, the name of Yosef. What about the symbolism? Right, the symbolism is Yehuda is the Bechor, not biologically, but the one that actually merited the Bechorah from Leah, son of Leah, from the children. And then from the children of Rachel, it's Yosef. Now, obviously, we don't have the tribe of Yosef. This is why he's switching to Ephraim, because Ephraim represents Yosef in a minute. Now, what's interesting is that V'chol Beit Yisrael Chaverav, and all his comrades. So on the first word, it says Yehuda and the tribes that are together with Yehuda, meaning we know that from the history it was Binyamin and Shimon. Okay, Binyamin and Shimon were in the kingdom of Yehuda. Okay, what? I can't hear you. Levim, forget it. The Levim were scattered all over. And then the second piece of wood, it says it's Yosef and the rest of the tribes. Now, what is going on over there? Because if you remember the split after Shlomo dies, right? The Zkenim, they come to his son Rechavam, and they tell him, listen, we need a break from the taxes. Your father, it's like, can we, because Shlomo added a lot of taxes to, because it was the time where they built the city, built palaces, built Beit HaMikdash, all that kind of stuff. So they asked for a break. And he said, you think it was, Abi Yiseretchem Bashotim Ba'ani Ba'akravim. You think it was tough then, the times of my father? It's going to get even worse now. And that led to the split of the kingdom, where they said, you know what, enough is enough. And they take Yerovam ben Nevat, and the kingdom split, and you have the kingdom of Israel versus the kingdom of Yehuda. Right? So in the kingdom of Yehuda, the kingdom of Israel, you have the 10 tribes, and they follow Yerovam ben Nevat. Yerovam ben Nevat from the tribe of Ephraim. Okay, so this is why we say Yosef. Yosef is Ephraim represented, right? So Yerovam is from the tribe of Ephraim. And because most of the nation followed him, he says, V'chol Beit Yisrael Chaverav. All his comrades, whatever, all Beit Yisrael, because that's the vast majority of the nation that went with Yerovam ben Nevat. The 10 tribes versus Malchut Yehuda. Yes? Okay. Now, what does it remind you? It's a deja vu to something. That idea of the wood, and you write the name of a tribe. Korach, bingo. So look at the source sheet in the first, source. Takes us to Bamidbar, the book of Bamidbar, chapter 17. דבר בני ישראל, וקח מיתם מטה, מטה לבית אב ובית כל נשיאיהם, לבית אבותם 12 מטות, איש את שמו תכתוב על מטהו. It's the test that God says to Moshe, the story of Korach. They want, okay, well, we'll do a test, no problem. I'll prove it that you're the chosen one. You were chosen to be the leader. So what do? They take the staffs from all the, right? And they write the name of the tribe on the staff. It's also wood, right? And then, if you remember, the miracle was done that the Mate Aharon, the staff of Aharon, was blooming, and that was the sign that Aharon indeed was the one chosen for the Kehuna. Okay, fine. So a deja vu to this story of Korach, and over there, what was the purpose? It's to single out, to show who is chosen, meaning is to separate the one who's chosen from those who are not chosen. Here, it's the opposite. It's not to distinguish, to separate, but rather to bring together. And here, this is a chidush, this is something new that we haven't seen before, not in Yechezkel, not in Isaiah, not in Jeremiah. Yeshayahu talks about two kingdoms that live in proximity to each other in peace. Okay? Okay, things will be fine. Same goes for Yirmiyahu. But Yechezkel takes it to the next level. What he says, they're going to come together into one kingdom. The nation is going to reunite. It's not two nations that live together in harmony and peace, but rather it's one kingdom. It's something that didn't happen even in the times of the Second Temple. It didn't happen. And no, at the time of the First Temple, they still lived together. Yes, it is, because the split took place only after the death of Shlomo. But it didn't happen in the times of the Second Temple. And the question is whether this is going to happen or not. Let's take a look at the second source. That's the subject matter of a debate of a machloket of Tanaim in the tractate of Sanhedrin. The Yerushalmi brings in Sanhedrin, brings the following. עשרת השבטים אינן עתידין לחזור, שנאמר וישליכם אל ארץ אחרת כיום הזה. מה היום הזה הולך ואינו חוזר? אף הם הולכים ואינם חוזרים, דברי רבי עקיבא. Opinion number one, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says what? The 10 tribes were lost, and they were lost for good. Just like you can't bring back yesterday, you can't bring them back. They're lost. They're completely assimilated, or they're gone, finished. So they're not going to come back. Done. רבי אליעזר אומר, כיום הזה, מה היום האפיל ומאיר, אף הן כשהיה אפלה להן, עתידה לאור להן. Rabbi Eliezer says, no. Rabbi Akiva, you look at the pasuk in the wrong way. The imagery, yes, the imagery is a day. So Rabbi Akiva says, just like the day is gone, meaning yesterday is gone, and it's not going to come back, so is the 10 tribes. They're lost and they're not going to come back. Rabbi Eliezer said, no. You're looking at the wrong aspect of the day. Day is also something that comes back, meaning, yes, now it's dark, but the sun is going to rise again tomorrow. Correct. So therefore, just like the 10 tribes, we had them, they're going to come back. Just like the sun rises every day and there's like day and night and day and night. So therefore, we talk about this idea of a cycle and something that repeats itself. Therefore, Rabbi Eliezer claims that he learns from that the 10 tribes will come back. Okay, and it's interesting because in our days, in the last, especially in the last 30 years or so, we see like all those, discoveries. You can be skeptical or not. I'm not gonna get into that, but the Ethiopian Jews, that they claim that they're from the tribe of Dan. You have, I'm sorry, the Bnei Menashe. You have the, there's another group from South America somewhere, and I don't know, there's a lot of discussion about that stuff. And, maybe, who knows? There's a guy actually in the yeshiva where when I studied with Rabbi Riskin, so there's, they have two parallel programs. There's a program for smicha for American or chutznikim, for those who, not Israeli rabbis. That's the program that I did, where you deal with second day of Yom Tov, kind of like the reality of Chutz La'aretz also. And there's another track for the Israelis who learned for the smicha of the Rabbanut in Israel. So it's much more targeted. The Israeli track is much more targeted to Israeli tests and everything. And the whole structure of religious life is different, because over there you have Misad Hadatot, you have the Ministry of Religion that takes care of. So for example, a rabbi doesn't need to know the laws of mikvah, because the Rabbanut is taking care of that. You don't have to. But if you are a rabbi in some community and you build a mikvah, you need to know how to do it, right? Israeli rabbis don't have to do that. Israeli rabbis do not have to deal with kashrut, for example, because it's all centralized by the Rabbanut and the other organizations. But if you are a rabbi in some Yenemsveld in South America or in Eastern Europe or whatever, then you have to do it. So it's different tracks. Anyway, so I took the Chutz La'aretz program because I live here. But the guy that runs the Israeli program, I forgot his name. I can Google it. He is one of those guys that travels all over the world and finds the lost 10 tribes from here and there, whatever. He's a very interesting guy. Very, very interesting guy. Okay. True or not, I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, that's his passion. Fine. Now, let's go, let's continue. We're going to verses 21 through 28. ודבר עליהם. ואמר אדוני אלוהים, הנה אני לוקח את בני ישראל מבין הגויים אשר הלכו שם, וקיבצתי אותם מסביב, והבאתי אותם אל אדמתם. ועשיתי אותם לגוי אחד בארץ, בערי ישראל, ומלך אחד יהיה לכולם למלך, ולא יהיו עוד לשני גויים, ולא יחצו עוד לשתי ממלכות עוד, ולא יטמאו עוד בגילוליהם ובשיקוציהם ובכל פשעיהם, והושעתי אותם מכל מושבותיהם אשר חטאו בהם, ותיארתי אותם. והיו לי לעם ואני אהיה להם לאלוהים, verse 24, ועבדי דוד מלך עליהם, ורועה אחד יהיה לכולם, ובמשפטי ילכו, בחוקותי ישמרו ועשו אותם. וישבו על הארץ אשר נתתי לעבדי ליעקב, אשר ישבו בה אבותיכם, וישבו עליה, המה ובניהם ובני בניהם עד עולם, ודוד עבדי, again, that's the thing about David, we'll deal with that in a minute. נשיא להם לעולם, וחרתי להם ברית שלום, ברית עולם יהיה אותם, ונתתים והרביתי אותם ונתתי את מקדשי בתוכם לעולם, והיה משכני עליהם והייתי להם לאלוהים והם היו לי לעם, וידעו הגויים כי אני אדוני מקדש את ישראל בהיות מקדשי בתוכם לעולם. Say to them, thus said Hashem, behold, I'm taking the children of Israel from among the nations to which they have gone. I will gather them from all around, and I will bring them to their soil. Can you think of a better fitting prophecy than this for Yom Ha'atzmaut? It's just perfect. I will make them into one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king will be a king for them all. They will no longer be two nations, and they will no longer be divided into two kingdoms ever again. They will no longer be contaminated with their idols and with their abhorrent, whatever things, and with all their sins. I will save them, meaning taking them from all their dwelling places in which they had sinned. I will purify them. They will be a nation to me, and I will be a God to them. My servant David will be king over them. We're going to talk about it in a second. We understand, obviously, it's metaphoric because David has been dead for a long time. So we're talking about somebody who represents David. And there will be one shepherd for all of them. They will follow my ordinances and my ordinances, and keep my decrees and fulfill them. They will dwell on the land that I gave to my servant Jacob, within which your fathers dwelled. They and their children and their children's children will dwell upon it forever. And my servant David, again here, will be a leader for them forever. I will seal a covenant of peace with them. It will be an eternal covenant with them, and I will place them and increase them, and I will place my sanctuary among them forever. My dwelling place will be among them. I will be a God to them, and they will be a people to me. Then the nations will know that I am Hashem who sanctifies Israel, when my sanctuary will be among them forever. Yes. Correct.
And here we done other things and then wait, but as we know, they didn't. Yes, but I think my question is actually on the same line. Is he is in Bavel?
Correct. He is in Bavel. Correct.
Yes.
We'll come back to Israel. Correct. Well, that's exactly. If you talk, if okay, you're on to an important point that I need to stress. If you look through the entire Tanakh and everything, you're not going to see any place that we're talking about a return after the second exile, meaning after the second temple. There's no discussion about the third Beit HaMikdash. There's no, all that kind of stuff. So where this is coming from? One of the texts that the rabbis use is yechezkel. Why? Because Yechezkel is prophesying about a temple, for example. We're going to see it later on in the book, in the last, like around chapter 40. He's talking about gathering of the nations, like, like what we read today, that they're all going to be together, the 10 tribes. All that stuff didn't happen during the time of the second temple, right? So he's prophesying before the return to Israel of Ezra and Nehemiah, before the second temple is built. And what happened in reality doesn't match what he said. So now, what do you do with that? How that's possible? We believe that Yechezkel wasn't telling the truth, meaning he received the prophecy from God. So how that's possible that what he says did not happen in reality? That led the rabbis to this idea, oh, nobody said that this is going to be during the second temple. Maybe this is going to be in the third temple. This is where it comes from. So prophecy like today, that the 10 tribes are going to be restored and unite, didn't happen in the second of the time of the second temple. So the rabbis come and they say, further in the future, third temple. You know what? Maybe you will live in that reality now. Maybe this is what we're experiencing. But the rabbis in the times of the Gemara that talks about that didn't know that in 1948 we're going to have a new state, and the whole process is going to start again of kibbutz galuyot that Yechezkel is talking about. So for me as a Zionist, I see the fulfillment of Yechezkel's prophecies. I have to believe in that. Yeah. Look at what's going on. We're going to talk about it in a minute. Exactly. You have to think the bigger picture. You have to think bigger picture. So, for me as a Zionist, I look at that, and therefore, and I think that why, by the way, the prophecies of Yechezkel for us living in this generation are much more meaningful than, for example, for my great-grandparents 100 years ago. They could not imagine, they didn't dream, they haven't dreamed, even my grandparents during the Holocaust, I don't think they ever dreamt that they're going to build a new home in Israel.
I think my brother got the generation.
They start but the vast majority was there in Europe. There were like, of course, there were individuals. Listen, my grandmother got stuck, so to say, in Europe for the Holocaust because she was the youngest in her family. All her siblings, it's pretty amazing. None of the siblings, nobody died in the Holocaust. You know why? Because they were already in Israel. So it's very unusual, right? But she was already in what they called Achshara, right? She was like already like getting training, like to move to Israel, to join her siblings who already came in the 5th Aliyah. And then the war broke and she got stuck in Europe. But the point is, the vast majority of European Jews were still in Europe, and therefore 6 million were gone. Okay? So it was thousands that moved to Israel, but it was just thousands. Okay. I'm sorry? They were not religious, most of them. No, they didn't have that. They didn't have that. They wanted a national home, and it was for us, correct? Okay, we're gonna get stuck with the time today. Okay, let's go back to that. So the main idea here is that the two parts of the nation, meaning the 10 tribes and the Malchut Yehuda, are going to be united with one king twice. And I mentioned that we're mentioning David, and it's not David himself, obviously, because David is already dead for a long time. It's one of his descendants, somebody who represents the kingdom of David. And the idea is that the kingdom is going to be united like the times of David. Like the times of David. By the way, if you remember, when David becomes a king, the nation is divided. The nation is divided. David, at the beginning, he's the king only on Yehuda, the tribe of Yehuda. Ishboshet, the son of Shaul, he is the king for the rest of the nation. And what happens is, once David becomes the king over the whole nation, that becomes his life mission. He's trying to unite all the tribes together. And what he does, the first thing that he takes Yerushalayim, he conquers Yerushalayim, and he makes Yerushalayim as the capital, and makes it very, very clear that it's not part of any tribe's nachala. It's not in the territory of any tribes. It's a city that belongs to the entire Jewish nation. It's in the border between Yehuda and Binyamin. It's not part of Yehuda. It's not part of Binyamin. It belongs to everybody. And as I mentioned, later on in the next generation, things are starting to bubble. Things are starting to get bad in the times of Shlomo, until the breakaway. So, and the other thing that this prophecy highlights 4 times about the different components of the Geulah, of the redemption, it's that it's not going to be temporary. It's going to be, it says 4 times, le'olam, forever. Okay, and that's, by the way, one of the reasons why the rabbi said, "Oh, we're not there. It's going to be a 3rd one," because, as we know, the 2nd temple was rebuilt, and yet again. So it's not le'olam. It can't be that, right? It's going to be. So what is the first component was, it's a unified kingdom, house of David. V'David avdi nasi lahem le'olam. Number 1. Number 2 is dwelling in the land of Israel. It says v'yashvu aleichem avneihem uvnei bneihem ad olam, dwelling in the land forever. That means there's not going to be a 3rd exile. Okay, let's hope that Yechezkel got it right. Or, I'm sorry, for sure Yechezkel got it right. Let's hope that the rabbis got it right, interpreting this as the 3rd. And God willing, there's not going to be a 4th. And then the 3rd element is peace and tranquility. Again, olam, forever. And then the 4th is the dwelling of the Shekhinah in the Mikdash. So there's the 4 times of the word le'olam comes with different elements: malchut, dwelling in the land, peace, and Shekhinah. And they're supposed to be forever. So this is a great consolation. And basically all the suffering, all the churban, all the destruction that we describe in the beginning of the book, Yechezkel said it's not going to happen again. It's going to be not a temporary solution, but it's going to be forever. And of course, he highlights also like the old stuff, meaning there's not going to be more idol worshiping. Am Yisrael is going to be purified, and they're going to live in Israel forever. Okay. Now, from this, that ends the chapter. So next week, we're going to go back to where we stopped. It means, I think it's we're going to go back to, it's going to be chapter 20, because we did chapter 19. So next week, we're going to go back to chapter 20. But what I want to do today, in the time that we have left, is talk about something that we started talking in one of the previous classes and connected to Yom Ha'atzmaut, and that's tikva. Right? Remember we talked about it. He talks about this word tikva. I want to expand on that because one of the symbols of Yom Ha'atzmaut is Hatikva, thank you very much. Hatikva, right? Israel's national anthem. Okay, Miri, don't listen too much because I'm going to give the same thing, I think, like this class, like in Hebrew, next time with Anat. Look at source number 3. I want to set it up. Rabbi Sachs, Alav Shalom, was very, very clear. He distinguishes between tikva, hope, and optimism. And listen to the way he writes it brilliantly. Optimism is the belief, in source number 3. Optimism is the belief that things are going to get better. Hope is the belief that we can make things better. Optimism is a passive virtue. Hope is an active one. It takes no courage to be an optimist, but it does need courage to hope. There's a fundamental difference between hope and optimism. When I talk about hope, tikva, I need to be active. It's me doing something. Have that in mind. That's going to be crucial for what we're talking about. At the end of, I'm going to jump into the Torah. At the end of the book of Genesis, Sefer Bereshit, Yaakov is about to die. Parashat Vayechi. If you want to look it up, it's on chapter 49. I put it in the sources. Yaakov is about to die, and he gives a bracha, he gives a blessing to each of his children. One pasuk seems out of place over there. So what he does, he gives a bracha to Dan. I'm in source number 4. Number 4. Dan yadin amok yachat shivtei Yisrael, yehid anachash alei derech shefifon alei orach, hanoshech ikvei sus vaypol rochvu achor. That's the bracha for Dan. Dan shall govern his people as one of his tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the road, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heel so that his rider is thrown backward. Whatever that means, that's not our class, but that's the bracha for Dan. Then what happens? He has a pasuk, very short pasuk, that says, Lishuatcha kiviti Hashem. I wait for your deliverance, Hashem. And then he goes into the next pasuk, which is the bracha for God. God gedud yegudenu vehu yagud akev. God shall be raided with riders. I don't know what that means. Okay, but he shall raid at their heels. So 2 psukim for Dan. Then this pasuk that seems out of place. We don't know exactly if it's part of the bracha for Dan. Is it bracha for God? We don't really know. And then Lishuatcha kiviti Hashem, and then the bracha for God, which is one pasuk. So exactly, what does it mean? Why is it saying Lishuatcha kiviti Hashem? Why is it getting out of order? What exactly is going on over there? So if you look at Rashi, Rashi doesn't, I mean, both Rashi and Rashbam give explanation. Rashi basically says, well, that pasuk is still part of the bracha of Dan, but it's not Dan himself, but rather it's one of the descendants of Dan. Who is that? Shimshon. Shimshon will need God's help many generations afterwards, and therefore said, Lishuatcha kiviti Hashem, meaning, give me strength. I need you, God. Okay, it's really not an easy explanation. It's really what we call dachuk. Okay, it's like really okay. The Rashbam, Rashi's grandson, have a different explanation. He said, "Shiushi otcha v'yisagevcha la'umot." It's still part of the bracha of Dan. He needs that extra help, and it doesn't. The Rashbam doesn't explain why or what's going on. Not the greatest explanations, but what I would like to do is to take that word lishuatcha kiviti. Kiviti, from the word tikva, the shoresh kaveh, kuf vav hey. And perhaps if we're going to play with that word a little bit and understand exactly what's the meaning, thank you. you already know that, then we'll understand better what Yaakov is saying. Okay? So, tikva, and that's exactly, and that's what we mentioned, like one of the previous prophecies in yechezkel, tikva, kaveh, that shorish has to do with connecting, okay? Gathering together. It goes all the way to the beginning of Chumash. It's the story of creation. Look at source number 7. Vayomer Elohim yikavu hamayim el makom echad v'terei hayabasha. Okay? God said, let the water below the sky be gathered into one area. And if you're wondering why the English translation know that yikavu is gathered, meaning come together, it's, look at the Ibn Ezra, it's number 8. Ibn Ezra says yikavu yitchabru, to be connected. In other words, God says all the water are going to connect it, gathered into one place, and by doing that, we see the land. The land emerges. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about, so the shoresh, kaveh, kuf vav hey, has to do with connecting, gathering, coming together, attached, which is also works very well with the prophecy of Yechezkel today, because what he is asked is to attach the two pieces of wood. Remember? Yeah. Okay. Now, remember the story of the spies that Joshua sends to Jericho? Right? The whole story with Rachav and the whole thing. Okay. So after she saves them, she makes a deal.
Shamli, kav shamli.
Right? Tikvat chut hashani. That exactly, Shoshana. That means she makes a deal. The deal is what? You're going to save me and my family. And they said to her, you know what? Fine. If they're inside your house, your apartment, whatever, they're going to be okay. How do I know that this is the right of how the Israeli army, the Jewish army would know that this is the apartment not to attack? Tikvat chut hashani tiksheri b'chalon asher odetanu bo. That rope that you tied in the window with which we went down, right? Because she was by the wall. So she put a rope, and they used that rope, like Romeo and Juliet, right? Anyway, just earlier. That rope, yeah, to slide down, right? So they tell her, leave that rope here, so we'll know that this is the right apartment. What's the name? Tikvat. Tikvat chut hashani. Tikva. The same root. Kiviti. Yaakov says, Lishtuatcha, kiviti Hashem. Right? The Israel national anthem is Hatikva. In creation, we talk about the word yikavu. It's all the same root. Okay, good. So tikva is a rope that's supposed to connect. Okay, it's like the water. Everything is about connecting. Fine. Okay, okay. I get it. Fine. So, what is? And by the way, the word tikva comes from the word kav. What is a kav? It's a line. What's line in basic geometry?
Connection
Two
between
points. Thank you.
The shortest connection between 2 points.
Exactly. It's a connection between 2 points. That's a kav. So kav, tikva. It's connecting, attaching, gathering. It's meaning there's something that connects A to B. Okay, have that in mind because we're going to talk about hatikva in a second. Now, so back to our pasuk. What is Yaakov saying? Lishuatcha kiviti Hashem. Basically saying, God, I'm still connected to you. I have not lost hope. Why is he saying that? And why in that place? What's going on? He's in the middle of giving brachot to all of his 12 children. He's in the middle between Dan and God. And he says, God, I'm still connected to you. What's going on here? Why? Yeah, but why there? What not after Yaakov, Binyamin? I'm sorry, Yehuda, Binyamin, Levi, who knows? Shimon. What's going on over there? Okay, let's delve further. Shoshana, let me, because otherwise we're going to be out of time. Okay.
First thing he said to God.
I get it, but why there? Why there? Well, what's the significance?
Still waiting.
No, between Dan and God, specifically Dan and God. What's going on over there? Okay. So if you remember, all four mothers, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, had difficulties, challenges. Yes, Leah, we're going to talk about it in a second, with having children. Right? Sarah at the age of 90. Rivka takes 20 years until they have kids. 20 years. She's barren for 20 years. Rachel, we also know. What about Leah? Leah had 4 children, 4 sons. And then the Torah says, Amda miledet, vata'amod miledet. She could not have more children. So it's not that she was able to get, but then something happened and she was not able to have more children. She's going to have later on, but right? Because at the end she has 7 kids, like 6 boys and 1 girl. But the point is that she has challenges with pregnancy also. So all 4 of them have challenges with pregnancy. Now, why this is significant? The whole premise, the whole thing of Sefer Bereshit is what is the godly promise of continuity and being able to transmit that tradition, this great revelation to the world of monotheism or whatever that means, through descendants. That's what God says to Abraham, promised it to Isaac, to Jacob. However, at the same time, the wives are challenged with pregnancy. So I have this promise from God that I'm going to have many descendants like the stars and the whole thing. But in the meantime, my wife is 90 or 89, and she cannot conceive. How do I deal with that? It's a test. It's a test of emunah. Same goes for Yitzchak. He's promised that he's going to have so many descendants like the sand on the earth, blah, 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 blah. At the same time, his wife is barren for 20 years. So there's this tension between what God promises and the reality. Okay? And that's the test of the emunah. Now, what happens? In 3 of the 4 cases, they lost hope. They lose hope. Why do I say that? Look at source number 10. What does Sarah says? Sarah, at some point, she says to Abraham, "V'tomer Sarah el Abraham, minena tzarani Adonai miledet, bo na al shifchati, ulai yibanei mimena." Vayishma Abraham lekol Sarai. Sarah says, you know what? Listen, I give up. I cannot have biological children. So therefore, come to Hagar, and you will have a child from her. He's going to be my child. That's what it means. I'm going to adopt him. I'm going to raise him. But she gives up on the hope of having biological children. Okay? So she lost hope. That's Sarah. Source 11. Rachel, what does he do? Exactly the same thing. ותרא רחל כי לא ילדה ליעקב ותקנא רחל באחותה ותאמר אל יעקב הבה לי בנים ומת אנוכי ויחר רב יעקב ברחל ויאמר התחת אלוהים אנוכי אשר בנה ממך קריבתן. Okay, they get into this big fight. ותאמר פסוק ג' הננה אמתי בלהה בוא אליה ותלד על ברכיה ויבנה גם אנוכי ממנה. I don't need to invent the wheel. Your grandmother did that already. Take Bilhah, and you'll have children with her. So we're going to continue. We're going to make sure that the godly promise is going to be fulfilled, but it's not going to be with my biological children. So she loses hope on having biological children. Yes? Okay. What happened with Leah? Oh, I forgot to include that pasuk here. Leah does the same thing. Vatere Leah sees what Rachel did, and she takes Zilpah and gives her to Yaakov as well. So Leah loses hope having more children. So all three of them lose hope. What about Rivka? Rivka, it's different. Rivka never, she knew what happened. She could have copied Sarah. She didn't do that. They never lose hope. On the contrary, source 12, ויעתר יצחק לאדוני לנוכח אשתו כי עקרה היא, ויעתר לו אדוני ותער רבקה אשתו. He's davening. Hold on. He's davening. You know what? To your point, by the way, the rabbis take it to the next step, and the rabbis actually say that he was davening one corner and she was davening in the other corner, just to emphasize the point that I want to make. They never lost hope. 20 years, but they never lost hope. It's not only the giving her maid to the husband, it's also being active. And that's what Rabbi Sachs is talking about. Hope involves me being active. Prayer is being active. If I'm not doing anything about that, then it's not hope. Hope requires me being active. Prayer is being active. I'm trying to do something. It's not in my hands, but I do what I can. And what I can is talk to God. Okay? Just a sec. Let me just finish this thought. So now, let's go back to our pasuk from Parashat Vayechi. Yaakov is about to die. He's giving brachot to all his kids. He gave the bracha to Dan. Who is Dan? No. Of Bilhah. Dan is the oldest son of Bilhah. Who is Gad? The oldest son of Zilpah. So now, at the end of his life, Yaakov kind of has like a recap. He's like, he plays the movie again of all those 147 years of his life. And he is like remembering the time, the circumstances, the climate, the situation that led to the birth of those two children, Dan and Gad. What happened in my life at that time? Oh, we lost hope. We lost hope at that time. Then this is why I ended up with Bilhah, and this is why I ended up with Zilpah, because both me and my wives lost hope. So what happens? Like he does Dan, and they say, oh wait, now remember what happened. It's like it all comes back to him, and therefore he declares immediately, I'm still connected to you, God. I never lost hope. I never lost hope. I'm still connected to you. I'm not losing hope. And I think this is why we have this particular pasuk right smack there in the middle of the brachot of Gad and Dan, even though it seems out of place. What's interesting to me is, if you follow the Israeli news, is Israel always had a lot of conflicts and demonstrations and protests and right and left. And I remember like growing up in Israel, there was like all the time. I remember when I was a really little kid, like all the protests against the first Lebanon war, it was huge. And like, you know, so it's not a new thing. What we're going through in Israel, it's not a new thing. Is it different? Probably yes. It's whatever. I don't want to go into that now. What's interesting is that all those protests and all that kind of stuff, everybody's using hatikva all the time. That's a new thing. Because I remember the protests like growing up, whether it was the Lebanon war, second Lebanon war, against the, the disengagement from Gaza, Oslo Agreement, all that kind of stuff. Hatikva was never part of that. Yes, Hatikva is Israel's national anthem. Nobody uses that as part of to express something. It's the anthem. Now, if you look, you Google it, look at all the clips from the protests. Everything is Hatikva. Both sides, by the way. Those who oppose and those who are for the reform. Always Hatikva. And I'm asking myself, what is the significance? What is going on here? Why Hatikva specifically all of a sudden? And I think it's connected to the meaning of the word Hatikva, the hope. What is hope? Something that connects A and B. One of the worst diseases is depression. You know why? Because somebody who's depressed, he loses hope. He or she loses hope. And therefore, there's no real cure for depression. When you lose hope, then you give up. I think what happens in Israel now, they're trying to say, by singing Hatikva, I'm connected to a different reality. Things are, let's assume, bad now, but I'm hopeful because I'm connected to either the past, the future, to a different point in history when things are going to be good or things were good. Depends on what side you're listening to. Those who are for, those who are against. And I think that this is the power of that song. Naftali Hertzimber, when he wrote that song, he never thought in his wildest dreams that the state of Israel is going to be established. As far as I remember, when did he write it? Like in 1919 or 1920, something around that time, I think, maybe even earlier. But he's saying, Od lo avda tikvateinu. By the way, he had a different version. That version that we're used to, it was adjusted later on. He called it Hatikva Hanoshana. That was taken out by Ben-Gurion later on. But he said the hope is 2,000 years old. What is he saying? I'm here in the Galut of Eastern Europe. Things are bad. Pogroms, all that kind of stuff. But I'm still connected to reality of 2,000 years ago. And I connected, there's a rope, there's a kav, there's a tikva between these two realities, the one 2,000 years ago and the one of today. And because of that, and because I still pray or think about it or yearn for that or make aliyah or whatever I'm doing, and this is why it became so popular among the chalutzim, that song, I'm active. If I'm active, I'm hopeful, says Rabbi Sachs, because I'm not that sitting there and saying things are going to be okay. I'm active. I'm Zionist. I'm doing something. I'm moving. I'm talking. I'm praying. I'm whatever that is. And that's what makes me hopeful. And this is why I can connect a dot from 2,000 years ago to my reality today that is not good in Eastern Europe in the 20s. And I would like, and that's, I think what happens nowadays, we can perhaps stretch or have another line into a better point in the future. So those who oppose to the reform today, for example, say, we're not losing hope. The fact that I'm playing Hatikva, it means I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on this state, even if I disagree with what's going on here. And that means I'm connecting to myself to a better future. That's what I'm playing Hatikva. I'm connecting myself to what I think, and that's obviously debatable, I'm not getting into the political debate, to a better future. That's why I'm playing Hatikva. That's what it means. I'm making the connection. Naftali Hirtzimberg made the connection to the past. Today, people are making the connection of where they are into a different point in the future. So I'm hoping that everybody will have a meaningful and a joyful Yom Ha'atzmaut, celebrate. It's a huge accomplishment. We should be proud and we should be hopeful, not optimistic, but hopeful that with our help and the help and the efforts of the entire Jewish nation, we'll be able to merit even a greater future than today. Okay, next week, same time, same place.